Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Eclectrocasts. This is Jeff. I'm here with Kees. Kees, how are you this fine August morning?
I am Kees, and I'm here with Jeff. I'm great, thank you.
Excellent. Kees and I are holding down the Northeast. It's been really hot and steamy and rainy lately. Yeah. And all the way over on the left coast, we have Larry Schubert. You guys will know Larry as Thuck Wormeinster. Or Wormeinster, Wormeister.
Meinster.
Okay. I'm not even sure how to say it.
Well, phonetically, it's Wormeinster.
I just worry that I will not say Thuck correctly.
So that
I will use a different letter at the beginning.
That was a name that was given to me, and when it was coming up, it was Thuck and then W-O, and it was like, if they go with Thuck Woo, I'm gonna be like, really. We're gonna start this game over again. I got Wormeinster, and I was like, all right, I like that. That makes me happy. Well, okay. So I was involved in it was an online community, and they ended up publishing a book, and they had a web presence, and it was called it was the Oyster Squadron, and they had like a wiki, and it was all based off that, and I was using a different name, which was from like an online role-playing game, like a low-tech MMO, like nerd thing. But I was using that, and I said, that's a different name. And I said, this is all about, like, this is when I started doing the stuff that I'm doing now, when I kind of restarted doing this. And I was like, look, when you're born, you don't choose your name. So you guys are a bunch smart. Why don't you guys make up a name for me? And it was like they turned into a game, and there was points and raffle and like bidding on letters, and that's where Thuck Wormeinster came from. And ever since then, that's what I've gone with.
And you'd never felt such beautiful attention put to you before.
And it was like I was really interested, like generative music at the time, so it was like, let's have a generative name, like let's see what comes out, and I'll go with it.
So it's kind of random, really, in a way. Yeah. All right.
That's great. So before we get too involved in any other kind of great chat and repartee here, Larry, can you tell us a little bit about your online presence? Now, we know you from Twitter, and we have a lot of common friends and compatriots in that community. But where can people hear your music, buy your music, find what you've done, find your work easily?
Yeah, well, if you can figure out how to spell it, it's Thuck Wormeinster, and you can find me on Bandcamp, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Instagram. I'm even on Facebook a little bit, but Bandcamp would be where I post all my music, and also SoundCloud too. SoundCloud, I do I often do shorts that I upload to SoundCloud that I don't. So there's some different stuff on SoundCloud that you won't find on Bandcamp. So those would be the two places to really find me.
Yeah, I think a lot of us use SoundCloud as almost like a sketch pad in a way.
Exactly.
Kind of ideas and development. And,
yeah.
And your Naviar haiku work is there too. Well,
yeah, I did one of those.
You did one of those.
That was I need to do more, but it's life is busy.
Yeah.
I get it. I know Kees participates a lot in that, and we've even had Marco who runs that. That sounds pretty cool. Yeah.
So Larry, we kind of have you here, not only because we've been sort of Twitter friends with you for quite some time, but you've also collaborated with one of our former guests, Unlike Noise, Leon van Bokhorst, and you've done some particular work with him around a water phone that I believe was a gift to you from your wife.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that collaboration on Waterphone with him, and we'll listen to it a little later. And then in general also, what is your attraction in collaborating with other musicians?
Okay. So like it's interesting. I stumbled across Leon's music about the same time I figured out that I stumbled across your guys' podcast. And at the time, there was other people I knew online, but I just really was trying to find I hadn't found my home yet, or like my try, like I was just trying to make more connections. But I heard Leon's music, and it was similar to stuff I was doing, but it was so different. And I'm not like when it comes to like interactions, I'm an introvert, you know, so I didn't want to talk to him, but I made myself. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go out on a limb, and I'm just gonna tell him what I think about his music. And one thing led to another, and we started working together, and we started talking, and we were both at the time really into like the old like I call them like the old tape masters, all the music concrete or concrete, however you want to say that. And so we started doing that, and one thing led to another, and Waterphone was one of the 4 tracks we worked on as we were trying to figure out like this kind of communication process of just trying to communicate through sound.
Interesting.
And so,
Hey, Larry, can you explain for a second what exactly a waterphone is for anybody who has never heard or seen one?
sure, it's a weird, it's a like an atonal instrument. It's kind of like 2 like metal pie plates that have been welded together with a bunch of rods, and then there's like there's a tube that it's got a tube that comes up out of the top plate, and you put water down in there, so it's it becomes resonant, and you can play it with a bow or you can play it with your fingers, and you've heard it like they use it in the Matrix a lot. They use it in old like creepy movies and stuff like that. It's one of those weird sounds. There was a musician, he did. Now I can't think of the guy's name. It's gonna drive me nuts now. I'm sorry, guys.
Was a film composer.
No. It was he was like he did. What's his name? He did that Jim Jarmusch. He was in the Jim Jarmusch.
Oh, Tom
movie,
Waits. Tom Waits.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Tom Waits used it, and he Tom Waits was really interesting to me because he said he liked using things that no one knew about, and it was like the early days of the internet. And he had like I heard about it in an interview, but it took me a long time to figure out what it was. And it was like that and like the theremin were like 2 things back then that I was like, oh, these are weird, different sound things, and I was always fascinated by it. So that's how I found out about it. And you know, then years later, my wife decided to get me one because now you can get them on eBay.
Nice.
You know,
Awesome. That's great.
So stepping back to your work with Leon, so you guys basically sort of try to have a musical conversation, right? A musical interchange, and not so much based on a chat, but it was more. So did you exchange pieces and then you worked with it and you sent it back? How did that kind of a conversation come about?
well, we would start and and so we did 4 tracks, and in the beginning, we would start with one sound, and so whoever started either I or Leon would send a sound, and then you would start building off that one sound, and then you would send that back, and you would try to leave room. So it's like you wouldn't do like everything, but you try to leave room for the other person to put something either low or high or in the middle, and then move to the next, and then build off of that. And we would just send stuff back and forth, and just allow each other to do or say what we wanted to do. And some things didn't work, and we would start over again.
Right.
But you know, and
That's cool.
It was interesting, and it was like, as a guy who's I'm super dyslexic, and so spelling and typing is like one of my worst things. So I was like, I'd much rather communicate with sound than the written word, because I'll like that's the worst way to get to know me is with letters. You know, I'm better at talking. I'm better at sound.
Right.
Like that's where I feel more comfortable.
So that's more fluid for you, right? It flows more. So when you're writing, it takes so much of your attention that you lose the whole flow of things.
Right.
Yeah, and then just trying to get it to come out like try to get the letters out right is it's cumbersome.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that, you know, and I think maybe you're hitting up something very interesting, is that, you know, communicating through sound and talking is a sound experience. It has a kind of fluidity to it that writing that fluidity only exists at the end, you know, not in the process of writing. It's right. Writing is a lot of like erasing. I don't know, Jeff, you spend quite a bit of time writing.
I see it as the same way as music, really. You know, you at first when you start playing an instrument and you go beyond the written page, right? Some people are fantastic clarinet players because they've been trained and they can play in an orchestra, but if you ask them to make up something, they have no idea what you're talking about. But writing is the same way. You know, you have to become familiar with how language works and become keen at expressing your thoughts adequately with words before you feel comfortable committing to them. So there's and I mean, we all listen to jazz players who will play a solo, like Coltrane, for instance. He would spend 4 minutes warming up before he found a direction to go. You know, So there's a lot of that sort of thing. You know, with spoken and written word. You know?
You're right.
That's a really smart way of looking at it.
Yeah. One of the pieces you put together with Leon that we played on a prior show with him, the waterphone. Did that begin with the waterphone? I mean, it has like incredible overtones, right?
That was the first. So like, I've got Leon on the hook now, you know, and so like when I send him stuff, it's got to be good because I want him to want to work with me. You know what I mean? So I got to pull out all the stops. So yeah, I sent him the waterphone, and I just kind of bowed it a few times and recorded, and then he started, and he was the one that there's like kind of some pad work, like he used the glass harmonium, and like at that point in time, I was trying to move for a long time. I was trying to move away from music theory entirely and do like, you know, create a whole new language around sound without theory. And then he came back and he had these really pretty sounds, and I was like, oh shit, I forgot about that. That's such a good way, you know. And because of that track, I started moving back towards theory and was able to kind of like use sounds and music theory, and it really changed. Like working with Leon was so important to my growth as an artist, but that track in particular had a really profound effect on me. And when it was coming together, I knew it was something special. As far as anything I'd ever made or been a part of. This was like this, and that's what I like about collaboration is you get these moments. It's like when you're playing live. You know, I spent a lot of time playing steel guitar live too, but you get these moments when things come together and there's like a chemistry that happens that wouldn't happen if you were by yourself.
Right.
There's and that's what makes collaboration so special is that kind of like that when things get brackish and mix up.
So Larry, one of the things that I think is different between you and Leon is that Leon can say a tremendous amount of things sonically in a very short period of time. A lot of his earlier pieces, he's been doing much longer pieces recently, and kind of after we talked to him, I think we put the idea in his head, but his pieces are rarely more than 2 minutes long, and I think your waterphone is about 2 minutes long, whereas you tend to take more time to lay out. You know, when we listen to some of your hindsight tracks, the notes are very stretched out, and you know, and hints of melody develop very slowly over time. So you take, you know, you almost like stretch things out. You really take your time to express. So how is that difference in affinity? How does that come together when you work with somebody like Leon, who can say a lot in a very short period of time?
If you go back to like some of my earlier tracks, I did a bunch of short stuff too, and that's kind of like what like I call them. I like to think of them as briefs, and that was something like I learned from like punk rock, and there was also like early tape guys were putting out short stuff too, and Leon was putting out short stuff at the time, and I was also putting out, like, I had one salt, and because I started working short just because I needed to get done. Like, I needed to, like, not get lost in the track, but I needed to grow. I needed to move forward. And so it's like, you can learn. So it's like, yeah, he's really good at it. He's really good at saying everything that needs to be said. It's like those musicians. It's like those like the writers that do commercial music, and they can make something good in 30 seconds. It's like I don't even how do you get to like past a bridge like in 30 seconds. You know, you could
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so for me, like I was doing that, and then it was just like, okay, I can say what I want to say in 2 minutes or less, but let's move on and let's do something different. And I've always been like, I'm not a fast player. You want a guy with ripping leads? No. That's not me. That's not the way my brain works. So I've always been like, when it's a nice mid-tempo song and things kind of slow down, that's where I was always most comfortable. And I found myself, whenever I'm making pads, I want the longest attack and decay, and it was just like, that's who I am. So let's just figure out where this goes. And I just kept, I don't know, for a long time, it sounded bad early on. I tried to keep things loose and slow, and it was just kind of messy. And it took me a while to kind of figure that sound out.
It's kind of like it took you a while to find yourself, right, in the music, right? So you're sort of like have these influences. You make these briefs, and at some point, I think after you started working with Leon, your own path became more clear to you. It seems. All right.
Exactly. Leon was huge in that. It was like we came together, and it was like I learned a lot in a short period of time, and it really helped me figure out who I was as a musician and as a producer, because before that I had just been playing. Like I played a lot of years, and I was very religious for a long time, and I played in church for a lot of years, and it was a different sort of thing. And I kind of, like, when I stopped doing that and I was already making my own stuff, it was like, it was just different ways of thinking. Like when you're playing in a band and you have like your own narrow little spectrum, it's like, this is where I belong. Stay out of the keyboard way. Stay out of the guitar. You know, we got a keyboard player, we got a guitar player. Don't step on anybody's toes. You know, and so it was it took me a while to figure out who I was.
Yeah.
And that was working with Leon did that for me tremendously.
Leon is also very process oriented.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So, of course he's mindful of the outcome and the overall result, but to him, a lot of the joy is in the discovery along the way.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's a sonic explorer.
Right. Yeah. I can tell he posts little videos to Instagram, and he has all these modules connected together with wires and he's got these little bleeps and lights, and I comment sometimes like, can you make music with that thing? And he laughs it off, but he's very much into that exploration. For him, that's really what drives him. It's like, oh, look what this thing can do, and then the possibilities start from there. You know? Yeah,
I and that's something I like too. Is I really like exploration when it comes. Like I like finding where like the sounds. Where does it like finding the sound that sounds good, and then what can you do with it? And oftentimes when I record, that's what I do. Is like it'll be something I've played around with for a few minutes, and then I'll just like record and play and try to get it while it's fresh.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. We all know about working an idea to death.
When we listen to some of your tracks later, I think folks will really recognize that when they listen very closely, they can hear you. And I guess that's the advantage of using a metal slide on the lap steel, is that you can move to a note, gradually, sliding to it, and then you can stop where you want.
Yes.
You can slide on, and it is that you can just see yourself. You can just feel your way around in the music that you're creating. But before we do that, I suggest we listen to Waterphone. And then let's turn into like, so you worked with Leon. It helped you find, some things in yourself that have now resulted in a number of tracks that we're going to listen to. So I think let's listen to Waterphone, and then by contrast, like has this gone from there? Yes.
So here on Eclectrocasts, we are talking with Thuck Wormeinster, and Thuck did a collaboration actually with Leon von Bockhorst. We know him as Unlike Noise, on a piece called Waterphone. We're going to hear that now on Eclectrocast. Larry, so you are a lap steel, pedal steel player, right?
Pedal steel player.
How did you get into playing that instrument, and where had you been before? What brought you to that instrument musically?
Okay, well, this is what happens. Like when I was a freshman in high school, I bought a bass guitar. I always wanted to play music when I was a kid, like forever. That was always what I wanted to do. So I got a job, worked the summer, got a bass guitar, and I played bass for a long time. And I was really into like rockabilly and old country and stuff like that. So I wanted to learn how to play upright, and I was taking upright lessons, and the guy wanted me to become his jazz protege. And I'm just not a jazz guy. Like jazz is good, but that's like it's just not me.
Right.
You know, like.
Right.
I'm not a dance guy either. Like I'm not gonna do like a 120 like 4 on the floor like or what you know.
Right.
And so like he quit giving me lessons, and I had just gotten like theory wise, like I was just learning the circle of fifths and trying to wrap my head around that. And I'd grown up on country, and I was and I was listening to a lot of ambient and experimental stuff, and like I just thought it would be like, all right, this guy's not teaching me anything. I'm going to get a lap steel because that'll be easy to learn. You don't have to do anything with your left hand. That was my original thinking. It's more technical. You're still doing stuff with your left hand.
Oh,
But,
gotcha.
yes. Oh, yeah.
So I just got like a 6-string lap steel for cheap, and kind of like came to the same problems that like other guys was like, well, if I had another string, I could do this. If I could just take this third and like, you know, instead of just slanting the bar, if I could, you know, you start wanting to move things around. And I saved up for a pedal steel guitar, and I bought one, and I went to a guitar teacher, and all we started doing was applying theory to the neck. And this was like YouTube wasn't what it is now. There wasn't.
Right.
And I just kind of started figuring out for myself for several years. And after I'd been playing about 6 months, one of my friends got me playing music with him, and I just kind of learned how to play in front of a church congregation. And just that's how I got there. It was just like, well, I can't take bass lessons anymore. I guess I could figure this thing out, and it sounds cool. I could maybe make some cool ambient stuff with it someday. That was that was like in 2001, and you know, it took me that long to get to where I'm finally doing that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think, well, first of all, you are our first, pedal steel player on Eclectrocasts, that's for sure. But also, your application of it is just like what we do with synthesizers too. So you've just found another voice, to add to what makes your music unique. That's great. Yeah.
And I gotta say, that's another thing that's been great for me about steel guitar is like I'm not a phenomenal musician. I'm just okay. But it's like playing the French horn. No one else does it. So
right.
It's like it afforded me so many opportunities simply because I was the only guy. Like that was always my biggest fear. Is like, man, if there's another guy that comes into town, no one's gonna want to do anything with me anymore because he'll actually know what he's doing. And I was able to get a lot of experience and do a lot of things just simply because if I'd been a guitar player or a bass player, they'd be like, oh, we've already got 9 of those guys.
Right.
We don't need you.
Do you play it sitting down or standing up, Larry?
No, you play the steel guitar. You play sitting down. You have foot pedals and knee levers.
Right.
So you have to kind of, so you have to be able to move you use a combination of knee levers and foot pedals to raise and lower the strings instead of what you would do with your left hand. I do with my knees and my feet.
Ah.
Right.
Cool.
And that's how you get that syrupy movement.
Yeah.
So you sit down and play it.
Yeah.
So those pedals are bending notes.
Yeah, they raise and lower strings, and you have to tune the pedals too.
Yes.
So you have to control, like you can tune them so that's basically how much travel they have.
Right.
So, but the wonderful thing that Jeff and I both play guitar, and fretted instruments are discrete, right? So even though you can make a note slide, it goes from note to note. It's a discrete steps. Whereas you have this continuous sort of a glissando, which are non-fretted instruments.
It's a wonderful glissando machine, is what I was going to say. Like you can just,
and that is.
But also means sometimes it's hard to find the parking spot too. Like you have to be careful about.
The only way we can imitate that is with a piece of glass or metal around our finger. But I've never found that come anything close to a lap steel or a pedal steel guitar. I mean, the only thing that I was curious...
It's the pedals.
Yeah. So the only thing, I mean, my ignorance that I was curious about is, like, can you stand up and walk around with it? Like, like the guitar,
no,
right?
You're like, no, I'm like a drummer. Like, I gotta sit, no, it's like, there's no, you can't be a rock star.
Right.
Like,
it's not,
you're there. You're like,
so you don't need to dress up. You could just be in your pajamas. Nobody would notice.
No, but and that's one of the things that's really nice too. Is like I can hide behind. It's like in a band situation, like with a full band. I always like to think of myself as like the cilantro in the musical burrito. Like just a little bit of flavor. Like you don't, if I'm not there, it's like, oh, something's kind of missing. But you're like, oh, that's what gives it, like, especially like in a full, like that's what makes it authentic. That's what makes it like it's.
Yes.
So
so you ever get
That's awesome.
requests to play like island music, like Hawaiian style?
No, I don't. I grew up on that. My grandfather, who was a pianist, and he showed me a lot of classical music, and like he showed me Respighi's Fountains of Rome when I was like in 7th grade, and it blew my mind because he was like, "Here, these are the fountains. See, this is," and he grew up in Hawaii, and so there was a lot of like Polynesian music growing up.
So there was a seed planted
like,
there. You just didn't know.
Oh yeah, but it was between that and, like I said, between that and my dad's a banjo picker, so I grew up with like the steel guitar, pedal steel guitar, and lap steel guitar. Like Hawaiian, they don't use pedals. It's all it's very traditional. The pedals didn't happen until you got a bunch of rednecks on it over here. And so that was something that I always grew up with.
So Larry, as I was preparing for our conversation and I was listening to some of your tracks, first of all, my wife really liked your work, and
thank you.
that's actually kind of interesting because there are a few people we have had on the show, and she likes the work of these people more than she likes my own work, and you're one of those. So,
well, thank you.
She's like, why can't you do that? Why do you have to be? Why do you have to be Hector Berlioz, or why do you have to want to be Stravinsky? Why can't you just do it like he's doing it? And that's exactly what she said.
Well, thank you very much. That's very kind.
Yeah,
that's very kind.
But it occurred to me that when we were when I was listening to your tracks, that I didn't know what I was listening to, and that is great. I didn't know what instruments I was listening to. I heard your pedal steel in there, but some of the pads that you were using had very slow attacks on them, and they could have been pedal steels overdubbed. They could have been heavily affected. I know you're a big fan of outboard gear and effects on your instruments. Kind of tell us exactly what goes through your mind when you sit down to write a piece. And I know there's a certain element of whatever comes out. But how do you make your sonic choices, and what are your kind of go-to sounds to kind of create what you really feel are you?
Well, that's a great question. Like, especially for this, like for hindsight, I really wanted just to get across the point of like melancholy and kind of like that bittersweetness, and I really wanted to find like, so in doing this album, I spent a lot of time after working with Leon and before working with Leon is like thinking about what do I like in sound, about everything I like to listen to, what in bands and everything, what is I like, and I figured out I liked simplicity. I liked things that were like kind of overdriven and dirty, and I like so I'll find like I tend to like FM synth sounds. And so I just go to those things, and I'll have like an idea, and then I'll just, how it is. You just kind of dig around, and that's when they explore. That's when you're like, that's when you're out on the seas exploring, see what you come across.
Right.
And
yeah.
When you get close, then it's just a matter of like making sure it fits in to like what you want it to sound like. And so I don't know if I'm answering that adequately.
Yeah. No, it's that whole idea of collage, right? You know, that whole idea of sound collage.
But you want things to fit, like they still need to be like in this. It needs to be from the same family, or like it needs to, like you have to be conscious of what you're doing to make things, like you don't want to, like earlier stuff I would just be like, I don't know what's going to happen, I'm just going to start doing stuff. But if you go in with like an intent of what you want to communicate and what you want to sound like I work with a very limited number of, actually, like in my DAW and stuff, I work with a very limited number of effects, and that's by choice, because when you put yourself kind of in a box, it helps you, like that's how styles get born. I mean, that's why that's why we like Daniel Lanois sounds like Daniel Lanois. When you hear Eric Clapton hit that guitar, you know it's Eric Clapton, because they have their lane. And so that's
a good point. Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to do with that.
Well, let's make sure that everybody understands that you're working on at least an EP, or maybe something a little longer. That's going to be called Hindsight.
Yeah,
right?
It's going to be an EP. It's 4 tracks. I sent you the 3 of the tracks. The last track I have to do is which was on SoundCloud, The Belly Full of Steel. Which was that name was a nod to Belly Full of Stars, because she had been encouraging me, and I was like, all right, I really need to get the steel guitar up and going, and and so like that's going to be that's also going to be one of the tracks. So there's going to be
right. So one of the things that in listening to your set as a whole, what I found very interesting is that definitely that sense of melancholy, but not in all tracks. There's sometimes also, I find, a gathering of courage feeling in some of the tracks. But what you do so nicely, what I find so interesting, usually when people play chords as an underlying structure to sort of drive a melody, the chords lay sort of in the middle of the frequency spectrum, on a guitar or a piano. But you drive where the music goes by a deeper sort of a growly bass sound. That is driving where the changes are going. Can you talk a little bit about why you do it that way? I found it very fascinating.
Well, it's just the way when I was a freshman in high school, and I bought a bass guitar, and that's like where I started. And I don't know if that's a part of it. And I tried to be a bass guitar player for a long time, even took upright bass lessons. But that's just if you like, that's the rhythm section, man. If your bass isn't doing what it's supposed to do, everything else is going to fall apart. Especially since I don't use like any drum machines right now or anything. I haven't been using a lot of percussion type stuff. So that's the gravy that holds the whole thing together. So
the bass defines the chord pretty much.
Yeah,
you could play any grouping of notes that you think is a chord, and the chord changes when the root note changes.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So, yeah.
It kind of comes about like when I was taking music lessons, and the guy that was teaching me called power chords neutered chords, because they don't have.
They are. They're
they're not major and they're not minor. They're neutered.
They're just 2 notes.
Well, if that's the sound you want, then that's great.
Yeah, but that was like, that idea was something that affected that I
neutered.
Like that's, and so it's like that made me think about how where you can throw in that third or the flat, the seventh, and that's where all the flavor comes
from. Yeah.
And so that's exactly like you're saying. That's how you get things to move around. That's how you get.
Yeah,
taste.
Isn't that interesting? Where you could play a power chord, a root and a 5, and throw a 7 in there, throw a flat 7 in there, and not have a tritone, and still try to voice lead with that flat 7. That's so odd to think of, because there's no tension in it, there's no tritone there. But that opens it up. That means you can go anywhere. You don't have to resolve.
Yeah, it creates space. Yeah, and freedom, like you said. Yeah.
Right.
And that is, Larry, I think when you use your lap steel, that is your freedom, right? That is your, it seems like that when you use a lap steel, the melody develops very slowly, but it goes sometimes to unpredictable places, not like there's a hint in where it goes, and then you go somewhere else, you know. And I think that is that lovely freedom is very nice. Now, I want to ask you something else about. Let's begin with Hindsight 1. It seems like it begins with some sort of a hissing, grinding field recording sound. And the reason why I bring that up is because in some of your other tracks and the way you sent them to us, there is some of that hissing, but it is part of the instrumentation, I think. So, but you did not try to remove that from your track. You know, like how when you have like a ground problem and you get that buzz or hum or a hiss, you keep that. That has to be a conscious choice. So what?
Yes.
Okay. Can you talk
so.
a little bit about that then? And then, okay, good.
Yeah, that comes down to like that's kind of like a homage to punk rock. That's to like that's I like it when there was this album, there was this small band no one knows about called Dead Man, and in one of the solos that he plays in one of the songs, he flubs one of the notes. Like there's 3 notes in, he flubs it, and like that was always like, it's like as a musician when you hear that yourself, it drives you nuts. But when you hear someone else do it, you're like, oh, that's what I like. And
right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so so it was just like I like things that are noisy. I like things that are dirty, and it was something I started doing earlier on, just trying to make things sound more organic and less digital. As I would just start putting in room noise. And oftentimes I would double room noise, or just like I would just like open my window and record for 5 minutes, leave my microphone recording for 5 minutes, and then come back, and that was like what I would build a track on. So it was just kind of that same idea.
Wild. Yeah, that's so wild. I love it.
Just
doubling the room noise. That is such a great idea.
Yeah,
thank you.
Very nice.
Wow. But you know, a lot of your sounds in Hindsight 1, the old, like it sounded like it was feedback. It was feedback that was controlled. I don't know if it was something that you created or if you had just taken a guitar and just let it feedback and then controlled.
That was
like controlled feedback sounds there, and they're overdriven. They're over.
Yeah,
they're overdriven.
I have a Moog Sub 37, and that was like that was the main. And then I used I use Logic as my DAW, and there's a synthesizer called Sculptor, and I created like a sound out of that, and it's
cool.
And so it was like kind of like a feedback. I tend to like bowed feedbacky.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounded like. Yeah.
So, but you also do not try to filter out the buzz in the distortion pedals or those sorts of things. So you really active, because I'm quite the opposite of your attraction. I have like a noise suppressor for my distortion, so that it is just beautifully clean. I love clean. So it's really cool to meet someone like you, and so refreshing, I have to say, because it sort of opens up my mind, like, who really cares? It is the sort of the rawness. So do you also mic do you have an amp? Yes, you have an amp.
I do have an amp. Like all my still recording stuff has been direct at this point, just simply because like to be, an amp sounds best when you're making an amp work,
Right.
And I play through a tube amp, and it sounds best when you make an amp work. But when it's 10 o'clock at night and you got kids, you can't just, it's so much easier just to go direct. And also what's great about that, well, you can do this with an amp too, but you can get, like, this is something I learned from Lenoir, is to let that noise come through. Like, he's really good at that too, is where like the bar noise and stuff like that, and it just like that played into like I said, I like low production value, meaning like I like rawness. I shouldn't say low production value. I like raw. Like I like when things are raw.
Right.
I like when that comes through. Right. So I try to push that through.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and listen to Hindsight 1? Let's go listen to Hindsight 1.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Again, hey everybody, we are talking with Thuck Wormeinster here, and He's preparing an EP. He has sent us a few tracks, and one of them is called Hindsight 1. We're going to hear that now on Eclectrocast.
So earlier, Larry, you talked about this idea of melancholy in your music, and the track that you say is going to be Hindsight 2, which is currently titled Belly Full of Steel, I think is a really, really good example of this sense of melancholy. But I think your music is broader than melancholy. I think your music is about mood. It's about mood, about feeling. And because it develops slowly, the tracks develop slowly. So can you, when I was listening to it, I think that this track is extremely well suited for like a Western movie,
Thank you.
Yep, I got that
right?
too. Absolutely.
Yeah. You see like somebody walking through sandy
desert. Yeah,
to desert with a
I grew up on
American
all this-
desert.
yeah.
I grew up on spaghetti westerns, and I love that. As a kid, I even watch them with my kids because like those like that guitar is so
the Ennio Morricone stuff. Yeah,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you. That's
this idea of mood and you know, so you create almost like a landscape with your music that way, right? So can you talk a little bit about that?
About creating a landscape with my music? Or?
Yeah, and this idea of mood. And, you know, so
Yeah.
melancholy is certainly one of the moods, but I think in hindsight, 3, for example, I think, you know, there is a very different kind of mood, which I would say sort of, that's a lot more about, it's more charged with energy. Like I would say like it feels like someone is gathering their courage to face a difficult situation. So that's what I noticed more in hindsight 3. So I think it is really mood setting what you do with your music, meditative almost.
I try to do. That's like that's what I'm trying to do is like is like an artist. I want to make people feel something. Like that's the point. So it's like, if I can make you feel something, or if I can make you feel like you're in a, like, I want my music to sound like it's in its own space, like it's in its own world. And then if I can kind of, so it takes you to a place and then make you, if I can express some sort of emotional feeling, that to me, that's what art is all about, is like setting, like you can come across art that just moves you and it puts you in a different headspace. It makes you, and that's all I'm trying to do is just try to I'm trying to make you think and feel things that I'm thinking. Like this is what I want you to. I'm just trying to. That's what it comes down to.
But you leave a lot of space for the listener, right? So because your music is also very swaying. It's like waves, right? Very long waves, sort of coming on the shore. And so there is some, and it's in the panning and the rotational panning, you know, the rotational sounds in some of your tracks. So there is this sort of a coming and a going, which could lead to a sense of meditation. And it gives that space to the listener to sort of put themselves in that music, to put their own feelings in there.
Exactly. Yeah. I want interpretation. I want you to put your own, like inject your own feelings and thoughts and take your own take on it. That's what makes it personal. That's what I think I'm hoping that's what will make it interesting, is that you can find if you can put your own take on it, then it becomes something more personal to you.
Yeah. But hey, let's listen to Belly Full of Steel, or which is going to be called Hindsight 2 on the album. And then when we get back, let's talk a little bit about why you chose the title Hindsight for the EP. All right?
Yeah. So, Belly Full of Steel, a bit of a tip of the hat to Belly Full of Star, a good friend of ours. You guys may know her. This is Thuck Wormeinster, new track on an upcoming EP, Belly Full of Steel on Eclectrocasts.
Hey, Larry. So why hindsight? What is the significance of the title? And you know, we are always curious about naming and titling, and often people say, you know, it's just basically arbitrary. I have to name my track something, but hindsight seems rather purposeful.
Yeah, I don't like track names, but I like the idea of like an album, or an EP or a collection is like it's like a book, or it's like it should have something that brings it together. Like I think guys like there's a lot like Dylan is a good example. Like he would bring together different artists, and each album would have a particular tone. Like Blow on the Tracks opposed to like Nashville Skylines, and I like that. So it was like hindsight. So how I got to hindsight was the I released like a 16-minute track before that, which I considered an EP because it's basically it's 4 times 4 is 16, so there's 4 minutes. And that was called If Only. And so it was If Only. I was searching for this melancholy thing, but I was still like it was still all like music concrete at that point. And I just went to Google and said, what's the saddest sentence? And If Only came up. So that's what I named that track. And so then as I was working on it, I thought what would be the next continuation as I put this together, what would be the continuation of that? And so hindsight is like If Only is like it's the same thing. It's kind of like the looking back, like after you've been through it. So that's where that came.
So it is sort of a reflective stance then, right? It's like a looking back.
Yeah, it's reflective, and it can even be a little melancholic in itself. Like looking back, it's like woulda, coulda, shoulda, or it can be fond remembrance and sweet, and sweetness. All things I'm trying to. It's kind of just fit into what I'm trying to.
Makes a lot of sense, Larry. Thanks for explaining that.
There's something biblical also about hindsight. I can't remember what exactly it is, but I think of Job's wife.
That was
what was
not
that?
Job's.
Remember?
That wasn't Job. Are you telling me when she became a pillar of salt?
I think so.
Yeah, that was. Oh my goodness, I'm getting sloppy.
But there's something about looking back.
Yeah, she looked back and she wasn't supposed to.
Right.
And it's because she missed what she was giving up. They were it was like it's where the Dead Sea. They say it's where the Dead Sea is.
Yeah.
But if she was looking back because she missed like the life that they had, and God was smiting that town. Here came the fire and the brimstone, and and she looked back because she missed the good life she had, and she got turned to a pillar of salt. So
right, yeah, interesting. I don't know, just an interesting association. I mean,
yes, definitely.
Is that why we're all still sweating salty liquids when we sweat?
Very possible.
Hey, I want to talk a little bit about Hindsight 3, because I think that's kind of like a standout energy-wise in your EP. And it begins with like very metallic, distorted sounds, almost like, I mean,
There's
almost like
rattling percussion there. There's like a rattling going on.
Yeah, but it almost is like, when train brakes, like those metal on metal, the brakes of the train, those sharp, very piercing metallic sounds. And then it's the sounds swell, and I think then there's some percussive elements. Are those field recordings, Larry? Are you use field recordings there?
Okay, so that was actually I used my iPad for that track, and I have an older iPad, and so unfortunately I was trying to do it live. As like I'm trying to get more geared up and do more like Sky High Diamonds. I love what she's doing, and I'm trying to get as a guy who used to play live a lot, I'm trying to get more. So I was trying to do that on my iPad, and I had to end up recording the tracks. But that was the clicky poppy sound was an app called Tardigrade. It's like a granular synthesizer, and it was just like I took some room noise and then dropped it down several octaves and adjusted it so it had the texture I liked, and then I was using a couple other tracks, and I was using a really cool app called Fugue Machine, which is it's kind of like based like on Philip Glass's type work, where you can sequence your MIDI notes, and then you have 4 different playheads, and it'll play forwards and backwards over the notes, and then you can control how fast the different playheads
wow.
go.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so
What
it was.
is-
That's what like
What's that called again?
fugue
Fugue?
machine.
Oh, fugue.
Like
Oh,
classical
oh,
fugue,
okay.
F-U-G-U-E. Okay.
Like a fugue
Okay.
machine. And so yeah, that's like a really cool app. So it was just so I would kind of set things up. That's like I would set things up to work in that and let things kind of run its course and direct it that way.
But so that thanks, because I'm going to have to look into that. I love granular stuff. I really like it. It's a really nice way of thinking about, you think more of sound as packaged little grains, and then what should really keep you from tossing those grains in the air and see how they fall, But
Yes.
but what I like about Hindsight 3 is that there is sort of an energy building in that. So, again, there's the bass notes who sort of drive where the melody goes, but there is an energy building. And what it felt like to me, and I said this earlier, is that there is a gathering courage, like it represents a gathering courage to face a difficult situation. Am I getting somewhere with that, or am I completely missing the boat on it?
No, I like that a lot. I wasn't trying to make a song about courage or a track about courage. I was trying to make I was just trying to make something that I wanted it to feel like it was happening, like I wanted that that energy, but I never thought about it like courage, and I was just there's guys like Todd Dockstader. I don't know if you've ever heard of him before. He was a tape guy in the 60s from America, and he's one of my favorite. He's amazing. He was really good at making these moments. Like he would take just sounds, but they'd be these, and it was like I was trying just to make moments. Just trying to I was trying to get, you're right, I was trying to get energy across. But courage never crossed
it's sort of
my mind.
Well, that's Case putting his own, finding his own way in your art.
But the charging of the energy is very apparent in that. Hey, let's listen to Hindsight 3.
Hindsight 3, another new track from an upcoming EP by Thuck Wormeinster. And we're talking to him now. So Hindsight 3 on Eclectrocast. Larry, there's a beautiful moment in Hindsight 3 at about 1 minute 50 seconds in, where the harmony just wide, it opens up wide because you just play a different note, and it's panned hard right in my speakers, and it changes the course of everything, and it just changed the mood on that piece completely. And that's the power of one single note. It's just amazing. I don't know if you know it's the one I'm talking about.
I know exactly the point you're talking about, and it's one of my favorite. And what I was doing with one of the things I was doing in that track, and this is something I've done before. One of my little tricks is try to use different instruments to build a whole chord. So if you're just playing, that goes back to that whole neutered thing. If you have something that's neutered, but then you can bring another instrument, and it will change the sound and feel, and that's exactly what I was doing right there.
Yep, I'm with you there, brother. I love that stuff. Excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one of my. I know that's when that happened and it was working. I was like, this is exactly where I'm trying to get to. Good.
And it ends in that single voice. It all just kind of distills down at the end of the track to that one single voice, and that fades out, and that's kind of cool. You know, that's like one eye still kind of looking back in hindsight.
Yeah.
And then, you know.
So we were talking about this idea of like, how one note can be a turn, right? But something that I have a great affinity to is to work with the notes that are not in the scale or in a perceived scale. I like to play around the notes. And you don't seem...
Yeah, you're one of those jazz guys.
Yeah, but you're not afraid of that either. If people listen very closely, I think in Hindsight 3, in Hindsight 4, there is at least 2 melodies. And Hindsight 4 is almost like 2 people talking to each other. Hindsight 4 to me is a conversation. And
thank you.
And I heard a resolution in there too, Thuck. I hadn't heard it in anything. There were half resolutions in a lot of your things, but in Hindsight 4, there was a 5-to-1 distinctly, and I'm like, wow.
Well, that's
after not hearing it for so long, that sounds like home.
Yeah, well, that gets back to playing on the pedal steel guitar. So it's just like you can that's the beauty of that you can go from a 5 to a 1 and stuff like that. So with just mashing down a couple pedals, you can sit on. You can sit I can sit on the 3rd fret, which would, since it's an E, be like a G. I'd be in a G, and I can hit I can move 2 knee levers and get a C, or I can put down I can put down one and get like an E. I can use 1 knee lever, get an E minor, or I can get an A minor. Wow. I can get a C. I can move up. Yeah, so there's
right.
And so with the steel guitar, you can do that. So you just move around. You just push a couple things and you get there.
Does any of that go into what Kees was talking about the 2 distinct melodies going on? The way you play the pedal steel?
Yeah. No, the way I played it, it was very so what I did is I started out with a bass track, like always. I started playing lower in the lower register, and then what I did is I played to that, so it was kind of like almost like I guess it'd be like a call and response sort of thing, or just reactive. Whenever that's something I always, when I play steel guitar in a band situation or something like that, I'm always a very reactive player. I try to play to what's going on at the time.
Right, and I heard that too. I heard that the call and response with you had your low and medium tones, which I kind of heard as almost like animal sounds.
Oh wow!
And then you had that very high part that is the response part.
This is probably completely off the mark, but it felt very much like a conversation between 2 distant lovers, because the way you created the space, the 2 melodies were not next to each other. They were in different spaces. And I just thought it was absolutely wonderful. But in that track, you're not afraid to go outside of a scale. There are on occasion some dissonance in there, and that makes me stand up. That gets me going. That's where I have sort of the experience that Jeff talks about. Now you get my attention, because this is not just a story that I already know. No, this is a new story, you know.
Right.
Yeah, you can't just be safe. That's boring.
Well, yeah.
You know, you gotta
Right.
you gotta be like a bird on a wire. You really gotta, you know, you gotta lay it out there for better or for worse.
If you want a hit
you know,
song, you better be safe. Yeah.
I don't, but I'm anything but hit songs. Like that was
I think that's all of us.
that's fortunate of my musical upbringing. Like I was raised on country music and classical, and then like in junior high, I discovered punk rock, and I just skipped. I skipped the whole. Like my wife has this fantastic. She knows every hook to every radio song that she grew up with, and I don't know. Like I get Boston and Foreigner confused. Like honestly, like.
And maybe Toto.
Yeah, I don't know any of that stuff, and she'll be like, she'll start. She like, here comes, and she knows that, and it's like something that I just missed out on. Like I know a lot of Loretta Lynn songs and stuff like that, but I just so I'm not a pop guy. Like it never.
That's all right. Don't change.
I'm not going to.
No, it's what makes you who you are, you know.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to ride out on Hindsight 4, and you know, I think this has been a really nice conversation. I know we've been in, you know, we've been in touch with you, but it's like I've known you all my life, Larry. It's really a wonderful connection that I feel with you, and both on a personal level and on an artistic level, and so. I just think this is an absolute thrill, and my day just can't go wrong anymore. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I got to say the same thing, too. Like, you guys, both of you guys have just... I was... Like I said, before I found your podcast, I was feeling very much alone musically. Like, I needed to find people to connect with, and I stumbled into Leon, and I stumbled into you, like, in about a 2-week period. It was just very serendipitous, and...
Good.
Like your guys' music is fantastic, and your podcast is you guys put so much thought into the questions that you ask.
Yeah.
That
thank you.
It's like that's what my favorite part of what you it was like instead of just being like I live in a small town. I'm in California, but like I'm in a little red patch of California politically, and like it's a blue collar place, and there's not like to tell people, oh yeah, I like making weird sounds. You want to hang it? Like there's not, you know.
That doesn't happen.
So to get to hear people talk about process and their art, for me, it's you guys have become like I said. I feel like I've known you forever, and you've really given me like a like now I have like there's a whole like I have people that I know now because of you guys.
Yeah. Right.
And
right.
And
yeah, well, we found that thing years ago too. That's why we started this, because we had found I had more than 4 years ago found a little community of electronic musicians on Twitter, and I was telling Kees about it, and Kees joined in and made friends with all the same people I was friends with, and found other ones, and then I made friends with them, and it kind of grew from there, and we started to bring in this Eclectrocasts idea because we felt all these people had something to say.
Yeah, I heard you guys, like I heard you, and it was like I'm gonna make sure I'm a part of this. I'm gonna force my way in here. I'm just gonna start tweeting and start.
Oh, you didn't have to.
I know, but that was just my thing. I was like, I'm gonna make sure this happens. I'm not gonna give these guys a choice. Here I am.
It worked, Larry. It worked. You did.
It's like, I'd be that kid. Can you come out and play? Can you come out and play?
Yeah. There are a bunch of people that we've had on our list for actually 2 years that we still haven't gotten to yet. They'll remain nameless now, but we'll get them sometime. So.
And we've had to slow down a little bit. We have both have full-time jobs, and it's a lot of hard work, and so we have to slow down a little bit, and this is the pace that works for us. So. That's what we're doing.
That's exactly what you need to be doing.
But it's not just you that's getting something out of this. We simply would not do these kinds of conversations if there's nothing in it for us. So talking with you has given me some new ideas to work with, something to focus on, and I'm sure the same thing goes for Jeff. That's what makes it worth it.
Absolutely.
And this idea of a person-to-person connection, and not just 144 or 280 characters or whatever it is. You know, but as a way of closing this out, both of you are dads. I'm not a dad, and you know, I'm a
You're dog dad, dog and cat, dog. And
I'm a
cat
dog dad too.
I'm a
dog dad,
caring
too.
person, but what I am, and I've had these conversations with Jeff, and so what I'm really interested in, because this is not my experience. You know, you post some pictures of your boys. You have 2 boys, right? Yes. And you
Yes.
see,
boys,
and
8
you
and
seem to
11.
be really keen on them. You seem to be really, really enjoying fatherhood. And by the way, this is not true for everybody. Not for everybody I know. There's people that do not enjoy
Yeah.
parenthood at all. But
I
it seems to
agree.
be an incredible part of your life. So how does it play in your artistry being a father?
It slows it down. It slows it down because
Word.
Lord, yes, because fatherhood to me comes first. You know, right now my kids still think I'm cool. They
Oh,
still want
yeah,
to spend time with
lucky.
me. So I want to soak up as much
Good,
as that
good.
as possible. You know, and so I don't know if it informs my artistry so much as it changes it's who I am as a it's
Right.
changed
Right.
who I am as a person, and that changes it. But yeah, I love being a father. Family and community, it's community. That's really I enjoy that. And it's like if you're gonna have kids, then that's the kind of stuff you should be doing. And I try to do the same thing with music. Like I like community. I want to see, like I love retweeting when people have stuff out. I want to see everybody do better. Like some people might get jealous because something's happened to someone else. For me, it's like I think that's famine thinking. Like there's plenty for everybody, and the more you make, the more there is.
Yeah,
It's not there's not a finite of anything. And so I don't know. I guess that's how. Maybe that's how it informs me is like love. There's always like you have one kid and you're like, wow, how could I ever love another kid that much? And you get that kid and you're like, wow, there's just more love. It was already, and it's the same. You know, it's the same thing with music and community there too. It's like you just want, you know. And I can't believe I didn't fucking cuss that much on your guys' podcast. I was gonna try.
Sarah Gatter's
at
going to
least
be very disappointed.
I know. I was going to try to at least get 3 F-bombs in. I only got one. I'm very disappointed too.
But I think this is a really lovely way to come to some closure for today. You know, it's this sense of like the sense of caring, a community, and you know, and sort of like hopefully our podcast will contribute to that experience, right? Among
It does, and it has.
Great.
It's been huge for me. Like I can't. It's like you guys really are one of my. Excuse me. You guys really are one of my favorite podcasts out of just for the community that you guys build, and you guys are great community builders. People like that.
we try. We try.
Yeah.
You,
Thank you.
you guys are fantastic
Thank you.
at it.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks.
it's fun for us too.
All right. Well, so thanks so much, Larry. I'm getting goosebumps right now, and like I said yesterday on Twitter, the room is aglow with blush. But
Good.
But let's ride out with hindsight.
So
4.
we're really happy to have spoken to Larry Schubert here, who goes under the name Thuck Wormeinster, and we're gonna ride out on a track from his upcoming EP. This is called Hindsight.
It's been a good fucking time. A really good fucking time.
Excellent.
Fucking fantastic. There, I got 4 in. Double.
These are
2.
for Sarah. These are all for Sarah.
Yes.
Hindsight 4, everybody. Thanks for listening, and hope to see you guys soon. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. Bye, Larry.
Bye-bye.